We will call this meeting to order. So first of all, I'd just like to make a few announcements. We'll start with this Thursday at 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the BCF. We'll be discussing community standards bylaw, the tourism corridor bylaw, and the incentive bylaw. So we hope that you come out and discuss this so that if you have any questions that we can answer them for you. As well as next Thursday, March 6th, there will be a budget open house at the BCF, Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. And that same evening, the Sports Expo will be on at the BCF. So there's lots going on at the BCF that evening, so please come by and check it all out. As well, March 1st at the library, they have an evening event called the Crafter Dark. And this is for ages 15 and up, and bring your most portable work in progress to the library and spend time with others to create some artwork. So that's a great event the library is putting on. So if you have any questions on any of those events, you'll find them on the Town of Drumheller website, so please check it out. As well, I would like to swear in Councillor Fred McWeckie as the Deputy Mayor for the months of March and April. Would you like to come up, Fred?
That I would diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability execute, according to the law, the office of Deputy Mayor for the Town of Drumheller for the months of March and April 2019, so help me God. Yeah. Now you can sign.
Okay, and I just have one more proclamation to read, and it's the Freedom to Speak, or Freedom to Read Week, February 24th to March 2nd. Whereas Freedom to Read in an initiative to promote literacy, tolerance, knowledge, and a love of reading among all Canadians. Whereas the right to pursue the truth through free inquiry is essential to democratic decision making. Whereas the freedom to read, print, on paper, or online is the essence of free inquiry. Whereas the freedom to read can never be taken for granted. And whereas the freedom to read is under assault from left and right of our society. Now therefore it is resolved that the Council of the Town of Drumheller endorses the objectives of the Freedom to Read Week and recognizes, reaffirms, and defends the rights of the citizens of Drumheller individually to decide what they will or will not read, and calls on all residents to actively work towards achieving these objectives, and in doing so ensure Drumheller continues to be a freedom to read zone in which the freedom to read and the right to seek information will not be violated. Now therefore I, Mayor Heather Kohlberg, do hereby proclaim this week of February 24th to March 2nd, 2019 as Freedom to Read Week in the Town of Drumheller. Okay, we have guests today. So we're going to move up the agenda here a bit so you guys can do your thing, and then we'll let you send off. So I'd like to welcome Nick, Jen, and Patrick from ATCO Electric to give us a presentation in regarding to the customers' bills. So welcome. You're going to sit back and let them take it? All right.
As you're likely aware, I relocated to the Three Hills office as operations supervisor there. Nick is still your kind of go-to guy here for all things operations. I think most of you have met Jen Friesen from our Stettler office. She kind of assumed a lot of the duties that I was doing before as kind of a customer service and sales type role. So I'm here just to help her as she gets her feet wet a little bit and hopefully answer any questions you might have.
All right, it's finally nice to meet everybody that I've communicated with in the past. We are basically doing a PowerPoint.
Jen, I'll just get you to really speak into the mic because we're being recorded so that residents can hear online.
Okay.
Thank you.
Today we're doing a presentation, Understanding Electricity Costs. We care about the communities and the customers that live here. We have a privilege to serve them. They are a family our neighbors and our friends. In Drumheller right now, we currently have 27 employees out of the office, and we've been in the community since 1927. And yeah, we hope to, I guess, answer any of your questions regarding customers' bills. And please ask any questions anytime throughout the presentation. Oops. Okay, shedding light on your electricity bill video. Electricity is an everyday necessity, but chances are you don't think about it until it's time to pay the bill. But what do those charges really mean? Why does it cost what it does? And what value are we getting? In these short videos, ADCO Electric breaks down your bill to help you understand what you are paying for.
Electricity bills. We all get one, but who really understands them? The truth is, they're not all that mysterious. Let me explain. Here at ADCO Electric, we deliver electricity, and while we may not send you your bill, our charges are listed on it. We want to help you understand exactly what you're paying for. At the top of the bill, you'll find the name of your retailer. Retailers sell your energy. They're also responsible for sending your bill, which includes all electricity-related costs. In Alberta, you can choose from a selection of retailers. Each retailer offers different energy rates. Some offer the default rate, otherwise known as the regulated rate option. The government of Alberta regulates this rate. It changes monthly based on market price. Your other option is a fixed-rate competitive contract, where you pay the same rate for the duration of your contract. There are many competitive retailers out there. Alberta's Utilities Consumer Advocate can help you make an informed choice. The retail rate you choose will affect the next part of your bill, the energy portion. This portion of the bill is calculated by applying your retailer's rate to the amount of electricity you use in cents per kilowatt hour. This portion of the bill may vary from month to month, even if you have a fixed-rate contract. That's because most of us use a different amount of electricity each month. For example, your energy charge might be higher in the winter when there's less daylight and you spend more time using electricity indoors. If you're interested in reducing your electricity usage, we can help you out. Visit atcoenergysense.com for helpful tips on how to be more energy efficient. In addition to usage, the energy portion also includes administrative charges set by your retailer. Okay, now let's move to the delivery portion. ADCO Electric's rates are included in this part of the bill. Delivery charges cover the cost of getting electricity to you. There are two types of delivery charges, transmission and distribution. Transmission lines transport electricity from power plants to substations across the province. All electricity customers in Alberta pay for building and maintaining transmission lines, but most of the costs are paid for by heaviest users in the industrial and commercial sectors. Distribution lines take electricity from substations and deliver it to homes and businesses. If you live in northern or east central Alberta, you're in ADCO Electric service area. We're the folks who build and maintain the distribution lines and poles that bring power to you, but we deliver a lot more than that. You can count on us for outage and emergency response at any time and in any weather. You get local service from employees living, working, and volunteering in your community. We provide electricity meter installation and timely, accurate meter reading for billing. We also install and maintain the streetlights that light up your neighborhood. And we offer free public safety and energy management education for school kids, farmers, commercial customers, and homeowners. All these services are included in the rates you pay. In Alberta, utility providers are assigned service areas. All customers living in the area share the cost of maintaining the system. In our service area, we have some unique challenges. Geographically, it's about 2/3 of Alberta's land area, but only about 16% of Alberta's population lives here. There are fewer customers to share the cost of maintaining a large system. On average, 1 kilometer of distribution line serves 3 customers. In densely populated urban centers like Edmonton and Calgary, 1 kilometer of line serves about 65 customers. Even Even though our service area presents some challenges, we have a continuous focus on saving money for customers by reducing our costs while still providing top-notch service. For example, one of our biggest ongoing expenses is managing vegetation growth near power lines to avoid tree-related outages. We have and will continue to introduce new methods that provide longer-term results and are more environmentally friendly. Aside from distribution and transmission, the delivery section of your bill includes some other line items. First, there's a local access fee. This fee is set by and charged on behalf of your municipality. It covers the cost of using municipal land and grants electricity distributors the right to serve the community. Then there are rate riders. These are temporary credits or charges the Alberta Utilities Commission uses to adjust for changes in distribution rates. The Alberta Utilities Commission approves all rates, including rate riders. Well, we've now covered the major portions of your electricity bill. As mentioned earlier, ATCO Electric's charges make up only one part of your bill, but hopefully you now understand what you're paying for. And remember, if you have questions about the energy portion of your bill, contact your retailer. Call ATCO Electric for everything else. We're here to help.
Any questions before we watch the second one? This one's kind of similar in a lot of ways, but there's a couple points that weren't made in the first one, so we just included it. It's a shorter video, though.
The more costly it can be. It's the same with electricity delivery. In communities served by ATCO Electric, rates tend to be higher than they are in other parts of Alberta. That's because we have a huge service area that covers some of the most remote areas of the province. In fact, we serve 2/3 of Alberta, but only 16% of the population. We build and maintain an expansive system to deliver electricity over vast and challenging terrain and in all kinds of weather. Just for a moment, imagine what life would be like without any electricity at all. It may be invisible, but the fact is, electricity is essential to our daily life. That's why we do everything we can to make sure our system is reliable. But sometimes Mother Nature has a different plan. In those cases, we're standing by to restore power as quickly and safely as possible. That's why we're here, in your community, living, working, and keeping the power on behind the light switch.
I think we did.
I think it might have skipped ahead in the video for some reason there.
Electricity. We use it every day. We depend on it to cook our meals, entertain us, run our businesses, power our industries, and communicate. But have you ever wondered just how electricity is delivered to your home? In fact, there's a lot going on behind the light switch. Let's find out. Our story begins with generation. In power plants like this, electric energy is created. Electric energy is transmitted all over the province on transmission lines. At substations, the voltage is lowered so it can easily be distributed to homes and businesses. Distribution lines carry lower voltage electricity from substations and deliver it to homes, businesses, and industries. When the power goes out, regardless of the cause, it's ATCO Electric employees who fix it, no matter the time or weather. In some neighborhoods, you may see overhead power lines connected to homes. In other neighborhoods, the power lines are often underground, so you can't see them. But you can always see your electric energy meter. It measures the amount of electricity you use. ATCO Electric installs and maintains these meters. We collect the data from the meter and provide it to retailers. Retailers sell energy. They're also in charge of billing. They use the meter data to calculate the energy portion of your power bill. The process seems complicated, but it's helpful to think about it like buying a product online. Let's look at buying a pair of shoes online as an example. The company that makes the shoes is like the generator. They produce the product. The online store is like the retailer. They sell the product to customers. ATCO Electric is like the delivery truck that makes sure your shoes arrive at your house safely and on time. Did you know that most Albertans spend more per day on shoes and clothing than on electricity? The Canadian Electricity Association recently compared how the cost of electricity stacks up against other necessities. As you know, necessities like these tend to cost a bit more in rural and remote areas. The further something needs to be transported, the more costly it can be.
Sorry about the slight mix-up there, but on our website, adco.com, these two videos, and there is one more, they are available there, I guess underneath our rates area, but there's also a page of frequently asked questions as well for any customer to go on site. Yes. Okay. So electricity delivery is a fully regulated service. That means that the AUC, Alberta Utilities Commission, reviews our costs in detail and approves our rates to ensure all of our charges are fair and reasonable. The AUC also approves our terms and conditions, code of conduct compliance plans. Electricity rates, we work around the clock to make sure that power is there when you are home, farm or business needs it. The approved distribution tariffs we collect let us continue providing the service safely and reliably. Your cost for electricity delivery includes the distribution tariffs and rate riders, which can change throughout the year. On this slide here, it does explain, I guess, that the AUC, its approvals that were, I guess, as of January 1st, 2019. It also talks about the riders that are in place on our bill. Anything extra to add?
No, you'll see riders come and go throughout the year type thing. Some of the riders are fees that the Alberta Equipment System Operator put on the bills. So they're the folks that dictate to ATCO what transmission lines and whatnot needed to be upgraded, replaced, new builds kind of thing. They monitor the grid on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis and dictate to the generators who can come online and when and things like that. So all of their expenses basically need to be charged to the Alberta ratepayers as well. So you'll see riders on your bill from time to time. I think it's just rider S, and you'll see them fluctuate from year to year depending on if there's major work or things are pretty quiet.
And as mentioned, the rate rider is a temporary credit or charge that may appear on utility bills. Some of these rate riders, municipal franchise fees, I believe Drumheller, it sits at 9%, and this money is remitted back to the town of Drumheller. As well, you have your transmission surcharges, special facilities charges, and balancing pool riders. For transmission and distribution charges, energy delivery charges include two components, transmission and distribution. Transmission charges cover the cost of moving electric energy from generating facilities through high voltage transmission lines to distribution utility substation transformers. Distribution charges cover the cost of moving electric energy from these transformers through local low power, low voltage lines that carry electricity to customers' meters. Transmission rates are approved and regulated by the Alberta Utilities Commission. The transmission charges on the electric bill are based on how much electricity the customer has used. As shown on this graph, Alberta has seen an increase in transmission charges since 2004 due to the expansion of infrastructure. Up until this time, Alberta had no significant upgrades to the transmission facilities since their installation, roughly, I guess, back in the 1970s. ASO determines the need for the new transmission infrastructure as well. There have been a number of large transmission projects which have led to an increase in costs being passed on to the customers. In 2018, monthly transmission charges paid by the average resident customer with a 600 kilowatt of consumption ranged from $19.75 in EPCOR's service area and $24.82 in ADCO's service area. Transmission charges constitute between 14 and 20% of a customer's total bill. Distribution charges. The AUC regulates distribution rates for Calgary, NMAX, Edmonton, EPCOR, and for Fortis, Alberta, and ADCO Electric. Distribution rates for Red Deer, Lethbridge, Cardston, Fort Macleod, Ponoka, and Crow's Nest Pass are approved by local municipal governments and town councils. REAs, which is a Rural Electrification Association, they have boards of directors that approve distribution rates on behalf of the members. And as shown on this graph, distribution costs, they vary from location and consumption. They are higher for customers in rural Alberta than for customers in urban areas, as we had seen in that video, because of the low population density and longer distances between customer sites. Our electricity distribution service area covers 2/3 of Alberta. It also includes some of the most difficult terrain. Because of our service area is large and sparsely populated, as mentioned, 1 kilometer of distribution line serves about 3 people. In urban centers like Calgary, Edmonton, 1 kilometer of line serves approximately 65 people. In 2018, monthly distribution charges paid by an average residential customer of 600 kilowatts. Consumption ranged from $21.58, that was in NMAX's service area, and ADCO Electric was at $81.24. Distribution charges constitute between the 22% and 47% of a customer's total bill. And yeah, just wanted to open up the floor if there's any questions or any clarification.
Anybody? Tom?
So the complaint that I always get, of course, is, you know, I didn't use that much electricity, but my bill's so high. And the way you've explained it, you know, makes a heck of a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. That especially in rural areas, you know, your infrastructure costs are astronomical compared with the number of customers that you have. And to me, I mean, electricity is something that, again, we all take for granted. We all assume that it's always been there and always will be there. You know, I turn on the stove to heat up my beans and wieners, and it's always there. And I turn on my light to read my golf book, and it's, you know, always there. And so again, we just take it for granted, and it's kind of like, you know, the community that we have, where we have roads all over the place and we have water lines all over the place. And again, people just take all that for granted, and they don't realize the massive undertaking that it is to get that energy to, you know, so that you can turn on your light and turn on your stove. So I found this presentation very, very enlightening. And it would be nice to be able to share that with more and more people, because, as I say, I get lots of people, you know, oh, you know, I didn't hardly use any electricity. My bill's, you know, astronomical, and this and this and this, and and they really don't understand that, you know, there are reasons for these charges, these costs. My second comment would be, and I don't remember if ATCO was affected by like the flood in High River or the fire in Fort McMurray, and if that does anything to your costs.
Absolutely, Tom. So High River was outside of ATCO Electric service territory. I think ATCO Gas did respond. They were affected a lot more. But Fort McMurray, for sure, ATCO Electric lost many, many structures there. At the peak, we had 300 workers there that responded to restore all the power. For something significant like that, ATCO needs to and did go to the AUC to apply for a special circumstance, you know, given the millions of dollars that it costs to replace that infrastructure, and ask basically for a rider for that significant event to add on top of the bill. So yeah, absolutely, Tom, significant events like that are added to the cost of electricity.
Fred?
Not sure if you can help me with this question, but can you explain if there's been positive effects or negative effects or money on our bill from the construction of those DC power lines that came down from the Heartland to go down to Brooks? And second thing I'd like to know is how Alberta Link fits into the whole picture.
You might have to take this one.
Yeah, Fred. So when there was Weedle and Edel, the two major DC transmission lines, ATCO Electric was responsible for constructing Edel, which is the one that ran down kind of by Hannah, I guess was the closest kind of to Drumheller that it got. But they said at that time that the average power bill in Alberta for residents would go up by about $1. Were affected by the construction of that line. What was your second question, Tom? Or sorry,
Tom,
Fred.
Fred. Well, are we experiencing now the benefits of this DC power line? And then can you tell me how AltaLink fits into the whole scheme of distribution and construction, and being that it's not owned by Albertans and it's owned by Americans? And I'd just like to know where it's from, how it plays into our the cost of our distribution and electricity in the province.
Second part first, I guess. So AltaLink, I can't comment too much, Tom, other than knowing that they own, Fred, sorry, that they only own transmission structures. They don't have customers per se. Like, they're not delivering to homes and businesses because they own no distribution. So I don't know too much outside of that in itself, or how they make money type thing. I would guess that their transmission charges are collected and distributed against all ratepayers in Alberta as well. I'm just not too sure of the exact mechanics behind it, so I don't want to give you too much false information. And Fred, would you mind repeating the first part of your question? I just want to make sure I capture it.
First part was, are we using the DC power lines we constructed?
Right. I don't know, Nick, if you have any comments on that. I know that they were energized, I think, beginning of last year, early last year. Edel?
Sorry, those lines have been in service for a couple years now, and yes, they are transferring energy from north to south or south to north, depending on where the requirements are. So that was one of the big benefits of that system.
And who paid for the power lines that got built? Is that the Alberta taxpayer?
No, ATCO would have fronted the capital cost to do that, and then the Alberta Utilities Commission allows us to recuperate our costs through the monthly bills.
Okay, I better understand that. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Daryl?
So looking at your graph up there of distribution charges and seeing the disparity between the cities and more rural areas, is there a way to petition AUC or the Alberta government to make distribution charges equal among all the utilities in Alberta? Because it seems interesting, and I guess the other question would be is that, so your map showing where ATCO is versus Fortis versus ENMAX and EPCOR, like that has a bit of a reaction that created basically the disparity in there. So in my mind, it would make sense to somehow lobby to have distribution charges equal among all ratepayers in Alberta, not just ATCO ratepayers or Fortis or can you answer that?
That's a great question, Daryl, and I probably don't have a great answer. We do have folks that work in our regulatory department that are the ones that are going to the AUC to justify our type of costs. But when we are at rate hearings defending, if we want to buy 6 new trucks and we need to be able to justify that to the AUC, there's also interveners that come to those meetings to they have the interest of their industry. For example, the AUMA is likely there to, say we want street light rates down type thing, right? And I'm willing to bet that somebody has looked at that with a microscope to say, does the service boundaries need to be adjusted? is ATCO's cost fair, things like that. But to answer the question specifically, has anybody questioned, does it make sense? Do we need to look at a different type of model for kind of balancing out ATCO versus EPCOR versus NMAX? I don't know, Daryl, but we can take that away and provide an answer to you guys at a later date.
Yeah, like I'm thinking that if it's a AUMA, something we would deal with through AUMA to try to lobby that way, then that would be something that would be fair for us to take away. I mean, because really that's a very telling graph that should be on your website to kind of show people the difference between, even if you looked at Fortis at about $38 per unit versus the $80 for ATCO. That could be as simple as just being across the highway from one side to the other and see such a disparity in there. And it makes no sense for something that's as simple as distribution charges. So,
yeah, no, it's a good point.
Christine?
Thank you. My question would be, because I think, and I might be totally wrong, so are there people outside of Calgary, for example, that are with NMAX still? Like in our community, are there people that are with NMAX?
As a retailer function, yes, NMAX, I believe, or EPCOR by NMAX, they can be their retailer, but ATCO Electric still serves and maintains the power lines.
Okay, so they wouldn't be getting some sort of an advantage to those. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thanks.
Anybody else? Daryl?
Oh, sorry, one more. So transmission side now. So if, so let's just take a couple of examples. So if you were in Drumheller and had transmission charges, so that's coming from ATCO. So that would be, I think you're in the description of the video, sort of coming from Sheerness, which is the generator, as an example, to the substation on the top of the North Hill. So that would be the transmission charge. Is that a fair example of a transmission charge for?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So then if you were in Calgary, where is your generator?
I mean, it kind of depends, Daryl. Like, it's not so much a Drumheller to Sheerness and Calgary to their gas plant or whatever. It's really the grid as a whole. So it's not that specific on where they're getting the energy from versus how many kilometers to the nearest substation type thing.
So there, because I was comparing a Calgary property to a Drumheller property today. Similar consumption, but the transmission line charges were much higher in the ATCO service area than they were in the NMAX service area. So I was just trying to understand why there was, you're getting it to that substation point, so your generator station should be similar, it may not be the same, but you're getting it to a substation, but there is a big discrepancy in terms of that cost. So.
There would be a discrepancy, Daryl. I don't know if it's that great. I do know that ATCO is a little bit more just due to the recent upgrades that we've done, such as the Eastern Transmission Line, and there's been a couple more lines up in the Grand Prairie area, and we're working on one currently for Fort McMurray from Edmonton. But again, it's going to be depending on the work going on, the capital costs year to year and stuff. Like you'll notice that for a couple of years their ATCO was lower type thing. I think it will be a little bit of a up and down type thing. We won't always be on top. It'll fluctuate, kind of depending on the year and the number of assets that need to be replaced, things like that.
Okay, anybody else? April?
Hi. I just wondered, I know that there are systems in place with the Alberta government, but if someone found themselves in financial difficulties or in poverty and they were unable to meet the full costs of their bill, does ATCO have any systems in place to support them? Or is that...
I don't think, personally from ATCO there is. I believe it's dialed 211. I know the government of Alberta does have I guess some actions in place that'll help those families out. Yeah.
We do have a separate service, and they spoke to it a little bit about ATCO Energy Sense, and I believe it's a free charge where we can help you assess your energy costs and some things that you could do in your home to improve efficiency and drive your costs down.
Thank you.
Tom? Fred?
It's a funny night.
Couldn't
today.
help myself.
And I'm going to put a heavy one on you. Can you, I see everything kind of moving up. Has there been an overall effect of the carbon tax in the end user's monthly bill, as far as you having to look at displacing coal as a main generator and going to alternates or buying your power other places? Are we seeing higher rates as a result of that above what the carbon tax actually, the line on the bill? Have you had to go through extra effort to compensate for the carbon tax?
No. Our charges are basically just for the maintenance and operations of the distribution transmission system. What you're speaking to is more from the generation side. So that might be, ATCO Power or some of the other generating companies. But for ATCO Electric ourselves and the bills that we're speaking to, carbon tax isn't really reflected in that. Other than maybe ATCO has had some additional operating costs as a result of us having to pay carbon tax for our energy bills as well, where it would be forwarded on to the ratepayers as well, but directly, no.
Anybody else? Is there any chance, Julia, for communication side, we can get on Facebook and our website?
I've sent the links for those videos, so I'll do it tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you. And Linda, maybe if you could just make a note that we can maybe write a letter to AUMA and just see if there's anything that they can help us with to offset that balance that Daryl suggested. Fred?
I'd go further to say, Madam Mayor, that what we should do is prepare an argument for a resolution to the AUMA in the fall, looking at a possible balancing of electricity across the province.
Very good. And just send a message to ATCO Gas thanking him to have our gas on this morning when it was minus 36. I appreciate that. Any other comments? All right, well, thank you for the presentation. It was well done and very informative, and this will really help share because we get a lot of questions on this area, so it will help us with those links and stuff. So thanks so much again.
Great. You betcha, and I believe you all have at least my contact information, so if you have any, you're sitting around tonight and you think of a few more questions, feel free to give myself a call or Jen, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I just have one last question, just kind of based on the last thing. So we get calls, as you've obviously heard and stuff. Do you? Yes. And if you do, what do you say or do to those calls? Like I think it might be advantageous for you and also less work for us if you had something proactively out in the communities to say here, explaining kind of what you've done to us, right? Because I think that helps clear it up. Doesn't necessarily make you happier, but it helps clear up the reasons for the charges. But I mean, we get an awful lot, and I'm sure you do. It'd be really good to be able to actually go and be proactive with that messaging. So,
well, as you've seen, Daryl, we do have the videos up on YouTube and on our website, so we try and encourage people to take a look at that so they can understand their bill. I don't know. I think likely as a utility owner yourself with the water bills, you probably get grilled from time to time about cost of your services. Do you guys do something similar in that format on getting that information out there, or just curious?
We include mailers with our bill and messages on the utility bills as well. So just same thing, driving people to inform them of the message. So, yeah. But it might just be great. Just thinking of Kyle in the corner of actually talking to Drumheller Mail about an article on it.
Yeah, we've actually been on the radio station as well to help educate, and that was, I think, last summer. We do try and look for opportunities like that to share the information, but yeah, a lot of it is customers just coming to the office and asking or giving us a ring too. So
Perfect. Yeah, those links are huge. So if you can share them, Kyle, maybe Kyle could do a good story on that. That would help the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, safe travels. Stay warm. Hopefully this will all break soon. Okay, let's move on to 2.1, and we'll start with Economic Development Strategy Action Plan. Julia?
Hi, so just on an update for that, the advisory committee, we had a meeting today, and they've just been changing the chair and vice chair of that group, and so that's just been agreed today. So I'm going to be liaising with them, and we're going to come and do a presentation in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and in that will include the Economic Development Strategy Action Plan and all the other things that their group are working on.
Okay, so let's tell me which date we're moving to.
I need to check with their availability, but obviously not next week, but the 11th or the 18th of March is what I would look at.
Okay, because I think the meeting's on the 13th, so let's say the 18th?
18th, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions? And that's the 10.1 that we looked at today.
So
correct?
there's a whole plan that has numerous actions in it that's come from the task force and various groups. Then from that we distilled 10 out of there. So we have an action list of 10, and then we have a bigger plan that goes over 4 years, I think.
And just so you guys know, of that 10, there's probably already 4 of them that are either completed or darn close. So
yeah.
It's moving along nicely.
Yep.
Okay, let's go on to April poverty reduction.
Okay, so we had the first meeting of the Poverty Reduction Action Group on the 5th of February. We'd invited 42 people from 28 different organizations, 17 attended. During the course of that meeting, which I thought was really productive, we reviewed relevant data and began to develop the name, vision, and terms of reference for the group. We identified areas in which we can begin working to address poverty, and the group listed key areas for action, and then they prioritized them. We established a steering group and 6 subcommittees based on those priorities that they had identified. So those 6 subcommittees are social inclusion, which met for the first time this morning, mental health and addictions, which is meeting on the 27th, and a couple of things that are already happening in that area is, so there is a rural mental health project that Starling County received funding for, and that includes a community animator for Drumheller. And so they can be utilising that subcommittee to do the work that they were planning to do anyway, which is effectively conducting a SWOT analysis of the services that exist here and where the gaps lie, and then feeding that back to Canada Health, which is great. And I'm currently applying for a Bell Let's Talk community fund to support mental health as well. There was a housing subcommittee formed, transportation subcommittee, food security, and education/financial literacy. At the first meeting of each of those subcommittees, they'll conduct a bit of a SWOT analysis and begin to develop an action plan. They're each of them asked to consider opportunities for both poverty reduction and alleviation to try and get both sides. They're going to look at setting targets and intended outcomes and how the results will be achieved and who's responsible for moving an item forward, so it's quite smart. And how we will know if we have been successful, so what measures are we going to have. They're also asked to consider who's missing from the conversation and who needs to be present or involved either in a specific action or generally. And whether there's any further information that's needed for them to progress and look at what other communities are doing, so we're not reinventing the wheel, that kind of thing. And then just a couple of things that I've been working on since that first meeting. So I've been working to draft some revisions to the recreation fee assistance policy, reviewing what other communities are doing, considering standardized thresholds for town of Drumheller supports such as RFAP, but also the handyman program, the community counselling program, the tax program, that kind of thing. And Councillor Garbutt actually mentioned at the last council meeting that there is some progress in terms of the conversation around emergency housing as well, which was also presented at Big Country Anti-Violence Association by Kamaswali Taves, who also sits on that committee. And so they were very supportive of the suggestions made, and so there's work to be done there, but it's all very exciting. And that's all I got for you right now. If there's any questions.
Questions? Tom?
Do we have a council representative that sits on this?
So Councillor Garbutt came and the mayor came along to the first meeting.
Okay.
I think Councillor Garbutt put himself down on one subcommittee and on the steering group. So yes, in that sense.
So did you identify anybody else who was kind of lacking in your committees that you'd like to see on there?
I think there's going to have to be, in each of them, there will have to be connection with businesses and industry. And so having those people at the table, for example, food insecurity, we obviously need to connect with the grocery stores and that kind of thing. Yeah, and there were a number of people that were invited and were unable to attend that particular meeting, but that we're hoping will be involved in one or more subcommittees.
Anybody else? So just to clarify, Tom, it was an excellent meeting, and all the people that were involved got involved in one area or another. So Jay and I are there to kind of get a view from the council perspective, and because it is on our strategic plan, it's really important that we keep abreast of this. Now, as far as the terms of reference, now, is there anything else that you need from council to continue this, or we've got it all?
My understanding is that this is not a town-appointed board or committee, and therefore I don't think we need any further input on the terms of reference other than the input that was given as a group. But once they're confirmed and approved by the steering committee, I'll be sure and bring them back and share them with you for your reference.
Okay, but continue as far as our strategic plan, we've completed what we've intended to do. So now this is a community-based, basically, project from here with FCSS.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I think what each of those subcommittees develop is the strategy, that is the poverty reduction strategy for this municipality, and it will be all brought together and put into a document that will be, these are the strategies that we are implementing in order to address poverty in our community.
Okay,
so.
Perfect, because it's, obviously from a town perspective, it's obviously a problem that we're concerned about, but it's good to see that we've got numerous other people involved, so hopefully we can get more on those committees. Christine?
Were we able to align ourselves with the local Salvation Army? Are they able to help and even get to the bigger Salvation Army for help?
So they came along to the initial meeting, and between the two members that attended, they are on, I think, 4 of the subcommittees. So they're definitely involved in that. Their participation is obviously really important to us. So we're thankful that they, and obviously a number of other organizations are participating. So.
Okay, well, thank you. We can mark that one as, at least that part of getting it going is done. So thank you very much, April, for all the work on that. I just want to clarify back on the economic development thing, to just in case anybody that's on those committees are watching, that we have completed, 4 or so of that 10, but there's also 20 or more of the whole list that have already been completed. So just so we're aware that we're moving on that continually. So if anybody has any questions, we can show them what we've accomplished. Okay, let's move on to ICFs. Daryl?
So in ICF meetings, ICF is Intercollaboration Framework. So this is something that the Alberta government has said all municipalities that neighbor each other must engage in discussions on how to work better together. So we've had some success with some areas more than others, but At the ICF level, it's really council to council, and it's required that we have these agreements in place by April of 2020, so about 13 months from now. So we have been in discussions with a couple of the municipalities to start setting up these meetings, but I think it's a real, the next step is to make sure we get everyone's availability to be able to kind of proceed to having meets or meet and greets with the different neighboring. For us, it's Starland, Knee-Hill, Wheatland, and special areas. So,
Christine?
Is it looking like we're going to be able to all come together as a big group, or are we going to be individually meeting?
So in our case, so those are the 4 areas that we touch, but each of those community or counties also touch others as well. So we probably are going to be needing to do one-on-ones because we have to submit one-on-one. So what's our relationship and collaboration framework with Wheatland, and what's it with Knee-Hill? So while we can get everyone together to discuss, unless Knee-Hill and Starland touch, there's not much sense in them coming to us. Or if Wheatland's not touching Starland, they don't, other than just having a conversation with them, there's no need for them to be involved with each other. So, so it most likely just means a multitude of meetings over the next 4 or 5 months. So,
Tom?
So we're talking about our council meeting with their council?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So are we going to have an agenda of like what we're...
Yeah, we're going to need
like who
to
wants
be able
the
to,
airport and stuff like that?
Yep, it's absolutely a bunch of, and it's really how do we work together, right? So the goal that the province has is that in a lot of areas there's duplication of services, and of course with the provincial government in some cases funding both adjoining municipalities for the same service. So how do you make that more efficient? So a good example would be the fire department. How do you work on something that is a joint fire department and has agreements in place? In our case, flood mitigation would be a good one, where we have we might need the resources from Wheatland, Knee-Hill, or special areas as an example, depending on the issues. So how do we actually make that framework exist so that not just us but future people around can actually put these to work for everyone's advantage and ultimately save money. So,
Anybody else? Okay, well then we will move that. So hopefully we can start having meetings early spring. Is that?
Yeah, I
plan?
think that's the goal for all of us, is to be able to not wait until the last minute for these things. So
if we say March 25th, hopefully we can get a schedule of meeting dates? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then that'll be the next one, update. Okay, Downtown Plaza, Phase 1.5.
So this is where we're going to install the plaza this summer, where the Elks building currently sits, but will be down in a month or so. And what we're planning is just be able to have something that's both a combination of on-street and off-street activities. So be part of it will be on Center Street, but we won't be closing Center Street like we did last summer, but try to get people to be able to engage into the property, as well as putting stage and some of the other street furniture that we had there last year. So I think the next piece from this one is just actually putting it into play come the early May. So,
Christine?
Just regarding the demolition of the Elks building, is the company that's doing the demolition, are they filling everything in and packing everything in too for
yes.
getting it? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, they're required under the contract to remove all of the concrete to 1 meter below the surface.
Okay.
And then fill it in with clay material. And of course, because it's been so cold, their plan is to put a bit of a crown on it, land, and then it'll have to settle and pack it in once the frost comes out of the ground. So
yeah, that was actually a reason for my question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Tom?
So we also own the parking lot that's kind of behind there?
That's correct.
And so that will be made into Drumheller public parking? Is that the plan for that, or?
Yeah, actually, it is already Drumheller public parking. It's just not signed as such, but yeah, that would be the intent, is that to be able to use that.
Just curious, so what would be the plan then if they're gonna level that and stuff, but if it's raining and that, will it be muddy or we're gonna have something else down?
The top, again, it's in the contract, the top 8 inches roughly is a gravel, compacted gravel. So the same thing, so that you'll have a hard surface, but it won't be a paved surface, right? Because you wouldn't do that because you want settlement to, you're gonna get settlement no matter what you do there the first year, so.
Christine?
So how long until that we can actually pave it? Will it be paved by the summer?
No, not this summer. No, we would use, and really I think the whole idea of 1.5 is to say, is this the right place for this plaza long term? Because you wouldn't want to spend $40,000 on paving and then find out that it just becomes a parking lot. Unless that's what you determine we want to do with it. So I think we want to be able to look at was it successful in that space? Is that the best place for it? And then determine, and if it is, then we can look at this fall at doing the work for next year.
So yeah, just to answer yours, it's basically going to be just the way it was in Center Street with just tables and whatever over there just to find out if it's the right. Does that help?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And really the other part of it is that, we're still going to have it on the street, but it's just not going to close off the street. We're all going to go to the end of the parking line. So you'll still be able to drive around it, but you'll still have enough there for people to notice that there's actually something going on and being able to engage. Yeah, similar to what we did last summer with a bit of the patio, but actually we're going to physically block it off with plantings and things like that, so people will know.
Right, and so if there is a need for any flat, non-gravel surface, that we can easily go back onto the road or into the parking area. Okay,
correct,
perfect, thanks.
Fred?
Just a quick question to ask, how this is going to affect the markets on the street. Or can we look at reevaluating whether that's the best place for them and whether we should move them closer to the plaza? I think that was done a few years ago, a couple years ago, like this is where we're going to have the farmers market. I would suggest that that plan maybe was 1.5 as well. We should look at and see whether that was the best solution as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of answer that one because Downtown Business Association, the group that's getting put together, they've been talking about seeing if they can work with the markets where the best location of that is. So I think it will, if it's okay, we can let them continue to work that avenue. Okay, anything else? All right, let's carry on to employee innovation options.
Thank you. So far, I've been able to just gather some information, and I'm in the process of preparing a questionnaire actually to submit to our employees to gain some feedback. But I won't be able to do any real work on it till after I'm kind of finished year end, and yeah.
Comments? Okay, so what date are we looking at then, Barb?
Summertime, maybe mid to end July.
So we'll do a survey and then have those results by mid to end of July, or doing the survey in July.
I'll start stuff as soon as I can.
Okay.
This.
So a check-in back in July then. Okay.
Okay, so can we not say June, because sometimes July we take.
Just for an update, sure.
So June 24th. Okay. Okay, emergency scenario practices. Greg?
Mrs. Kohlberg. In the for council's information, last fall we applied to municipal affairs through our AEMA field officers for a grant, and the town received $5,000 for which we can carry out a scenario practice, however whatever we decide upon. We are hoping to September or October, give us time to plan, and that's what this funds are specifically for. And we'll do it in conjunction with the field officers who will help us set it up. And as of yet, I don't have a scenario set up for it, but I'm using these funds, and we will pull it off in after the summer.
Okay, so that's to have an actual kind of a tabletop thing?
Yeah,
Is
it's a dry run. So these are, one of the things when you build out an emergency plan is you want to practice the emergency plan. And so this is an actual practice. And it's, if I recall, the money we got is actually a multi-agency. So the expectation is that we're talking to Starland or involving Starland or Nehill and Wheatland in our emergency desktop operation. So.
Christine?
Is this kind of a general, or is it specifically like flood or fire?
Well, I think as Greg mentioned, it's specific, but we haven't done it yet. Haven't picked something yet. We could do flood, but you might want to do something that everyone talks about, but we never have. Thrown out the school bus hits a fuel tanker on Gordon Taylor Bridge, right? So, but.
We're going to pull off a doozy and multiple zombie nuclear. Computers are out, no electricity, kind of thing.
Cool.
No, seriously, but I'm totally serious. We will pull off something that is, and yep, we'll plan it, and it'll. No, they're a lot of work, but they're also very good when you finally get them set up. So.
Okay, so you're going to be working on that throughout the summer, and then you're going to give us a date of when that's going to happen. So then, as far as me on the calendars, because you know how I want a date, when are you telling me you're coming back to the? Because we want to get these things done before the next strategic plan, so that we can nicely say everything on here is done.
Do you want an update in May or
Sure.
April or?
I only want to update when you're actually going to give us something to get us off the list here. So
Yeah, no,
if
I
I
can
said May 6th.
Sure.
Would you have a good idea as to, okay,
I expect so.
let's go then, May 6th, okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Tom.
We are doing some emergency training on March 21st, are we not? Council? I got that written down.
I think that's the next agency meeting, but that's not council. I think, yeah, it's put on there on your calendar in error, Tom.
Sounds good.
Fred.
A few of us went to a meeting with Greg and Daryl about emergency planning, and it was kind of mind-boggling, the scenarios that are there to pick from. For instance, who would think of things like pandemics at the museum when, we have 25 or 3,000 people there, and somebody goes in with a communicable disease? What's the steps forward? What happens, Daryl brought up, what happens if a plane happens to pick here, that picked Nova Scotia to drop out of the sky? What if one drops out of the sky in the valley? So there's many more things than floods to think about, and certainly scenarios that could involve a number of municipalities along with us.
A great example, Tom, and I said this earlier today, but for those who read the news on the weekend, sorry, Fred, could you guys just switch already, please? Sorry, Fred. Must be your haircut, I don't know, so there you go. So as I was saying, Fred, for those who read the paper this weekend, there's been 30-some cases of measles in BC. And now one of those people actually flew into the Edmonton airport last week, and They've tracked them to at least 4 or 5 places, including a Walmart Supercenter, a hotel, and the Edmonton Airport. And so who knows how many people could possibly be infected. They actually are telling people, I think you have until March 6th or March 8th, you have to sort of watch yourself for symptoms. But that's a great example. If that person comes to the museum on Family Day, and again, it involves all of us, whether we think it's not ours or not. So, yeah.
All right, any other questions? Okay. Julia, community profile, please.
So we have a draft of so just for people to know, the community profile is something that we do in partnership with CAPE, so our regional partners, and it's a 4-page document talking about internet speeds, our hospital, and other highlights of Drumheller. We did have a draft, but there was a number of errors, and we'd put some comments, and they hadn't put those comments in. So I'm just waiting for them to get back to me. I would hope to have this completed by the end of next week, so that's March the 8th, just because we need to get it done. And also, just as an aside, so I know we've been talking at Economic Development Group about the Travel Drumheller Guide and having information about doing business in Drumheller, and this time there will be 2 pages with pieces about living and doing business in Drumheller.
Comments? Fred?
I'm glad to hear that. That's exciting that we're doing one effort that goes over many things rather than reinvent it time and time again.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Christine?
And just curious if we do any sort of branding, as we talked about last time, this is going to just be able to retrofit anything like that, or is this rolling out and then we just change it?
Well, this is something that we do every year, so it'll only be till Christmas, well, this time next year anyway. So, and I think that's going to be the case a lot of the stuff, like the flood things and everything, right? We just, as we get the new brand, when we get the new brand, we'll just have to gradually phase it all in.
And Julia told us today at the ACDEV meeting that the community profile, she's going to let ACDEV take a quick look, as well as us.
Yep.
So when you do see it, you've got to view it and get your comments back to her quickly, so that if
Yep.
there are any changes, they can get them in, because this is a draft. Okay. All right. So, and I'm not sure if there is, but we had a meeting at the hospital today, the the medical committee from the task force, regarding our nursing shortage here in the valley. And one of the comments that came up was when new nurses come to town, trying to find daycares and stuff. So is there any chance in this profile that we did list the
there is a list of daycares in the booklet. So there is in there, and I think this will be very much when we're working with our welcome package, and the hospital is a key audience for that, for new nurses and doctors, and I think we'll be looking and letting them know. And I think they're on our website, but if they're not, we can look at putting them on there.
Okay, that'd be great, because they're not on the website, because
Okay.
one of the nurses did comment on.
Okay.
And just to inform you guys on that committee, they're really going along really well, and they're actually working at getting a couple ambassadors from the hospital to be part of their group, so that there can be more communication as to how, from a community perspective, a town perspective, from all avenues, how we can help, because we definitely have a nursing shortage in the valley. Okay, good. So, Julia, I can put you down for an update then.
Well, I would hope that it will be done. That's my aim. By March the 11th, I would really hope that we've done it by then.
Okay, so March 11th we'll put for an update on that. And then another one we can cross off. Perfect. Okay, let's move down to 4.1.1. Daryl?
So Greg and I are going to tag team on this one. So the Community Standards Bylaw and Tourism Corridor, we had first reading last week. I think Community Standards we tabled second reading because of the number of changes, questions, comments about it. So what you see before you is actually the information that we had taken away from that meeting and revised. So, or we'll clarify with some of the pieces in here. So I think I'm not sure if there's any definitions, Greg, that we changed in here or not. I don't recall that there was. So the first one of note we had was, so we, actually, as I'm going through this thing, just want to make sure. Yeah, so the first one of note was the whole piece on signage. So this was a very, I think we talked quite a bit about this piece on signage, and the thought was that we have it in a lot of places, and we talked about the possibility of actually just leaving it in the land use bylaw and removing it out of these ones. The sober second thought of that, though, is the land use bylaw, from an enforcement standpoint, deals with stop work orders, injunctions, SDAB hearings, and things, not quick, very expensive for everybody involved, and usually are meant for, kind of something during the actual bylaw, during the building. So it doesn't cover posters on light standards or garage sale signs on boulevards. So we want to keep signage in this community standards bylaw. We have not changed it at all. It's basically as you saw it last Monday night. And it really is not changed much at all from what we've had in the bylaw in the past. So I'm not sure if there's any questions that we have with respect to it right now, but if you have a question. Good.
So are we removing it completely from the land use then?
No, the land use, it's in land use because it's dealing with stuff that's in the development permit process, so it has to stay in there. But it's different from the context of this. So this is it doesn't, the land use bylaw one doesn't deal with garage sale signs, or it's all stuff dealing with commercial and industrial applications. So, whereas these deal with signage, period, so. And Fred, you had a concern about it, or some questions about it last time, so just want to make sure you're
I'm good with the way you explained it, as long as it's covered and simple to get to.
Okay. All right. The next of note, we had taken away that 339. We had originally, I think last week, had a piece in there about anything emanating between any time of the day or night from parks and things like that. And what we did is we put the same time limits on there that we put on other noise emanating from any place. So it's consistent. So it doesn't matter if you're in a park or in your backyard or any place like that. So 343, we talked about, this was the tractor trailer or truck tractors. 50, we changed it to 50 meters of a residential development. So originally it was, or previously was 150 meters. So now we're saying 50 meters. So this covers off that truck that's maybe running on the highway next to the Tim Hortons that's adjacent to a residential area. So any questions on that one? No, we're good. And we also removed that piece under, sorry, just to go back for a second, under fire on premise, we actually removed the piece in there about anything to do with a fire between 1 a.m. and 10 a.m. In there. So yeah, it's covered off with if it determines that if someone complains because there's smoke coming in their property or whatever else, then it doesn't matter what time of the day or night, then that would be the action item. So it's not time related. So I'm not sure if there was, and I think the other thing we did, sorry, Greg, go ahead, please. Yeah.
We had discussed 3.05 derelict vehicles.
Yes.
A councillor voiced a concern that there could be a personal matter such as dispersal of an estate or an occasion where a vehicle was left, it appeared to be abandoned, but might have significant value and was waiting for somebody to deal with it properly. At no time, we work with the public very often to ensure compliance with a bylaw. Derelict vehicles being a problem, as I said, we are initiating We are starting a drive essentially to inform the public and to deal with any vehicles that are outside the bylaw on their properties. But the present wording to remain or to be parked on premises unless suitably housed to the satisfaction of the CAO, that would work, in my opinion, for reasonable enforcement purposes. We don't want to see vehicles sitting covered in ripped tarpaulins or on four wheels, and somebody's claiming it's worth a lot of money, whatever. But this wording we can work with, I believe, reasonably and enforce it to the satisfaction of to seek the compliance we're seeking.
All right, is there any, Tom?
Yeah, 3.42. I've been looking at that one and I don't understand. The operation or carrying on of an industrial or construction activity, the person operating and carrying on that activity shall make no more noise than is necessary in the normal method of performing or carrying on that activity. So if the activity is very noisy, very late, that's okay? Because that's the normal noise for that activity?
So those are two different things. So noisy and late. So late is covered, right? So late is covered in 338. Anything that creates a noise or disturbance which could be heard between 10 and 7 on a weekend and 10 and 9 on a weekend. So this is more of when I picture this to be that piece of construction equipment that could be idling, but someone's deciding to keep their foot on the accelerator while it's standing on the site, or unnecessarily, using a jackhammer or something where they don't need to beyond just the normal scope of their work. So they're doing it almost out of either what they consider to be a fun thing to do, rev their engine, or punitive to somebody around them. So it's not. So if in fact someone's doing that, then that's where we would go and tell them to stop and ticket them if necessary. Fred?
Would that be if we have somebody working and they have a generator and they don't have proper mufflers or something on the generator? That would apply something like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Or you're leaving it running for hours, but you only are using it for minutes, right? So the idea is that you're just leaving the equipment operating when you're actually not, or running when you're not actually using it properly. So, or yeah, you're failing to put anything on there that like a muffler. Yeah. Craig.
I was just going to add that very thing, or they haven't taken into account proper safeguards, et cetera, in the operation of the noise muffling equipment. Yeah.
Any other questions on? The other thing we've done is, I think it's on this one, I keep getting confused now, but we standardized the fines. So I think there had been some discussion about the fines before. And so we've just made everything $250 for the first offense, $500 and $750 for second, third offenses. So with a few exceptions for stuff that has a little bit of a higher requirement for us. So, Fred.
And I know what the answer is going to be, but I want to hear it come out of your mouth, Greg, is that you're not going to go and say, you didn't mow your lawn, and then go back 2 weeks later and say, you didn't mow your lawn, you got a fine. This is an interaction with our citizens and coming to, I know that's the way you work, but I think it's important everybody knows that this isn't the first course. This isn't the first course here with the fines. This is the last stage of remediation and talking to people about problems, right?
No, an absolute last resort where people are given a notice, they're given a second visit if they don't see, for example, cut their lawn. And if there's no compliance or no, then we under our authority send it to a contractor to cut the lawn. If the contractor shows up and he's rebuffed or told to go home, and the person, this is an absolute last resort, and when attempts to educate and inform and work with the public reasonably have failed. This is not, you haven't cut your lawn and here's your ticket for
Just want people to understand that. That's, nothing's changed here. We're just,
No.
we're getting the process down. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on this bylaw? Okay, so this one is going, this will be one of the few things for public discussion on Thursday night. So, and then barring any changes or discussion from that group, then we'd be coming back for second reading on the 18th of March for that, so. Sorry. Yes, Fred?
If we do public consultation, can we not do second and third on the 18th?
We could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, yeah. I just said second because that's I knew. All right, tourism corridor bylaw. So, having a moment, I don't remember all the changes that we did. So we did first reading of this last Monday, right? But I want to make sure, so of course we didn't have any discussion about it. We've had this before you before, but again, before we go to the public with this on Thursday night, is there anything in here that has any concerns from council? Fred?
I would think the only thing that I have a concern with is that we do some public information about where the tourism corridor is, who it'll affect between now and Thursday, so we don't get people reacting after the public consultation when we're in second and third reading about, I didn't know about it, right?
So we've done a mailer to everyone in the tourism corridor. So we've sent out 300 letters, is that right, Linda?
Over 300.
Over 300 letters, direct mail to the businesses or residences along the tourism corridor. So as well as telling them about Thursday night, telling them about the draft bylaw, where they can find it online. So we really want to make sure that those folks are well notified about that. So
I'm on the route. I didn't get it. She didn't get it.
I don't know if you're not on it, but DeMott Flooring would be on it.
I'm sorry, by the map that I saw, Railway Avenue is.
Is it?
Sorry, Railway Avenue is. And no, I didn't receive anything.
Okay. It's in the mail. Yeah.
No, that's
because my thought is
just done the end of the week.
My point isn't because I didn't get it. My point is I just want to make sure everybody that's going to be affected has an opportunity on Thursday to talk, and if they don't know about it till somebody tells them at the coffee shop, then we're dealing with an open house that nobody really understood it affected them, right?
Yeah, no, and again, that's why we sent out the mailers. It was the end of last week or Thursday-ish, I think, so I would expect that you'd probably see them today's mail or tomorrow's mail, so.
So we also, just so that you know, we've obviously been on our Facebook page, it's on the front page of our website, and I've spoken personally to the radio about it, and I know that it's been put into, so Christine's going to talk about it on the radio too, so.
Tom?
So is it mentioned in our communication that there was a lot of community input into this? Like we had a committee of a lot of people from the community that helped develop this?
Yes.
So that's part of the communication?
Yeah, the letter actually says that the committee was made up of business owners along the tourism corridor. So just to make sure that people know that there was involvement with those folks. So.
As well as community standards are the same, a different group of residents. Just to clarify on 3.22, that was one of Lisa's concerns, and with her not being here, I just want to make sure we got that fixed up for her. She had asked, I think it was only one day and we extended it. 3.22 on the tourism corridor
bylaw. So this was the 2 business days of notice. This was about graffiti, right? So 3.23 is where it says that within 2 business days of being notified, ensure that graffiti placed on the premises is removed, painted, or otherwise permanently blocked from public view. And so again, the intent of this is that if there's graffiti on there versus say public art, that you're basically paying a visit to this place, just to the place to tell them that they need to do something about it. If they come back and said, well, I paid somebody to do this and it's art, well, then you're not doing anything with it. You're not making them remove it, so. Beauties. Well, and of course, you know, as the comment, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So, you know, what's art to, what's one person's trash is another person's beauty. So you have to, I think you have to use a little bit of discretion with what you're doing. So if it's an obvious graffiti job, that you're going to have to deal with it differently than if it looks like it's art. So, and usually the owner of the premise is going to tell you as well that they've actually paid for something versus, you know, it appeared overnight. Christine?
And we, if anybody actually does want to get art put up on the side of their building, they do have to get a permit, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll know ahead of time if it was on purpose or not.
Fred?
I know that when I was doing the police thing across the province, that Calgary has quite a graffiti abatement program that we could perhaps have some information ready for people that are, rather than just go to them and say, get that graffiti off, we could hand them a brochure as how to deal with graffiti on paint, how to deal with it on stucco, who the people in town that we can contract to do that, stuff like that. So we've got something ready aside from just saying, get that off. We got to, you know, get that off, and you probably don't know how, but here's some information, right?
No, we have given out advice. We don't have I can come up with something, but we have given out advice or research for people if need be, so we're not looking to be, you know.
Tom? Fred?
Yeah, I know we have done some work on something like this, an MPC, where we had to deal with basically spray painting on a building that was not very presentable, and it was referred to as signage. And we kind of went around that at MPC and decided that that was not signage. And so there is a little bit of stuff there in MPC that we work with as well.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess the other piece, we can go back to 324, that section around signage. So the same thing. So we've got signage in there because we don't want to deal with it in a land use bylaw because it's dealt with in a much different way, as I explained on the other one. So basically this format is similar to the community standards, but with a tighter time frames to remove signs and stuff. Fred?
Well, I'm trying to look at 3.242. A permit's not required for changing or repairing the lettering of a sign. What does that mean? What does that mean?
So if your store doesn't say Fred's anymore, it says Fed because the R's fallen down,
right?
And you want to repair that, you don't need a permit. But if you want to change,
what if the paint is peeling and you want to put a new coat of paint on?
On the sign?
Yeah.
On the sign. So again, if it's a repair of it, you don't need a permit. So.
But if the sign changes, then that would be get a permit.
You do need a permit for that.
Okay, so regular maintenance and upkeep is not included. However, changing over the look or appearance of sign is different.
Correct. So if you were to change out, for instance, a lit box sign and that had a clear background to something that had a blue background, permit's required. If you're just adding a letter that's fallen down, no permit. Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay. Yep. Next, Greg, I'll let you talk to this one.
Thank you, Daryl. With the changing provincial laws regarding emergency management and response, one of the things upon the review of my draft of the plan that I undertook back in January with our field officers was pointing out some issues with our existing emergency management bylaw, previously numbered 11.11. Specifically, there's a yet unproclaimed but incoming provincial law referred to as the Local Emergency Management Regulation. And to that end, changes had to be made to our bylaw, specifically regarding the role of the Director of Emergency Management, most likely going to be the CAO, and that had to be sharpened up. A specific section of the Emergency Management Act was Section 19 that further listed the abilities, the emergency powers, responsibilities of the Director of Emergency Management. And we've added those under Section 11 of your copy of Bylaw 0119 in the council package today. It has been reviewed by our field officers. I put the draft together with Lana's assistance, reviewed by our field officers, and they are in agreement it would comply with the provincial law. And it was then put forward for the CAO's review. It's a fairly short bylaw. Without going into the exact nature of all the changes, if this bylaw was passed, we would be in compliance, and it would become part of, would be attached to the new emergency management plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, on number 8M, is there still David Thompson Health Region? I thought that was gone. I thought we were all AHS now.
I think so. Yep, we can look at that.
Okay, I know this is a pet peeve of mine, but I'm going to bring it up anyways, or pet peeve of your guys's, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. There's a list of how many people there, 26, 27, 28, and there's not one council representative on this. Is there? Am I missing something? Okay, I'm looking at a list of 8 on 8. On the list of people on the number under 8. So is that, they're not part of that, but they're part of just...
This is the agency that we invited to that previous meeting, and we're having another agency meeting in March. Council is not specifically part of all the agencies. Council members, yourself and the 2 council members appointed with you, are the council, are the council representatives of the committee, the Emergency Management Committee.
Okay, so that's what I just want to be clear is that on 5A it does say mayor and 2 members serve as the Emergency Management Committee. But then they don't show up on 8, so they're just,
no,
they're
the
part
committee
of...
would be, so Colbert, the committee would be the overseers, the guiders, of the entire program, and these would be considered the functionaries, the people that would work under the municipal. If we have an emergency, these are the agencies that we would then go to devolve responsibility to, not responsibility, but to certain specific actions that may be required under a state of local emergency declaration.
Okay, that helps clarify for me. Go ahead, Fred.
I would just think if you would think of it as a governance role, our job is to have our noses in, but our fingers aren't in this. So I think that's pretty evident.
And that's the reason why there's a liaison position between the incident command post and council, so that, that you are in a, you're exactly right. You're responsible to make sure that we have all the tools to deal with an emergency, but you're actually not in there with a sandbag or shovel to do with that.
Christine?
So in a scenario like a flood instance or something like that, like Mayor Kohlberg would still be in the meetings, or are we just completely out of the meetings, out of all that?
So there's a liaison that sits, so to use an example of this room, so council would sit in this room and there's somebody that would be going between the two rooms to make sure that there's, but as far as sort of being in the operations center, council, and I've been doing this for a long time, council's never in that room, so.
No, that makes sense. It's just I know that trying to get the message out properly for when people want updates on where the water's at and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Great.
Okay,
So
any
the-
other questions?
So I think the intent with this, if there's no other questions, then is this comes for first reading on the 18th, and then we would do second and third or third after that. And again, this will be something that, although most of it's pretty high level, it would still be part of our discussions on Thursday night. So if anyone's interested in it. So.
Okay, anything else on that one? All right, let's move down to 6.1.
Over the past, and I didn't write anything up, I apologize, but there's been some discussion around the proliferation of Airbnbs, and sort of some preliminary poking around. I noticed that we have licensed Airbnbs and we have free range Airbnbs. I have done a little bit of research looking in Calgary. Other municipalities are in the same position of how do we control, regulate, or whatever. But what we basically have in town now is we have bed and breakfasts and some Airbnbs who have chosen to register a business, pay for a license, and have the inspections and fire code and all that stuff. And we have about 50 registered in the community, and the majority of them with no controls whatsoever, no registration other than the online service to say this is an Airbnb, not paying any kind of fees, no standardization as far as looking at is there adequate fire escapes, fire monitoring, any kind of health concerns, anything like that. So I think I would suggest that administration look at Airbnbs and what other areas and communities are doing to deal with them so that we can bring them in and we can promote them or have them in as a resource for people visiting our community to expect the same level of safety and things like that, and therefore as well being able to advertise them as available places for people to stay and things like that. I think we need to look at how do we integrate these into the community in an orderly fashion so that there is some sort of accounting.
Good points, Fred. There are about, so I did a quick search about a week or so ago or 2 weeks ago, and there's about 50 Airbnbs listed on Airbnb. There are some others that are just on Kijiji or on Facebook as well. There is, as of today, there's 11 places that are registered as B&Bs or as tourist dwellings. So I think part of it for us is just a matter of now now that we know these places, is actually contacting them and telling them that they actually require a development permit because they are discretionary uses, and also that they are, as a business, they require a business license. And I think one of the challenges, and I sit on both sides of the fence on this one, because one of the challenges is that when you just talked about emergency exits and things like that. So some of those things actually aren't they aren't enforced as part of a tourist dwelling, for instance, because it's no different than your house or my house. So those same standards are required, because really you're renting a room out for a short period of time, or you're renting your entire house out. But I think, anyway, what we need to do is actually look at the places that are out there already that aren't listed as official, and then again through MPC, the application process is that at least we inform the neighbors that they actually exist, because in some cases people might not say anything because they don't know that it's it's a legitimate or illegitimate run business. So, but I think that this, just as a general comment, this plagues pretty much every single community since the Airbnb's website went online a few years ago. So,
well, I just want to be clear. I don't feel it plagues our community. I just think that we should be able to acknowledge them and stuff. It shouldn't be a subculture running under the radar. It should be, we have the capacity to give a license for a micro business, which isn't, if I remember, isn't a tremendous amount of money.
Right.
So
it's not. Yeah, and sorry, plague is the wrong word. I think it's every community is challenged by these because this didn't exist half a dozen years ago, and in some cases, places you'd never know that there's, it's no different than having a relative stay at your place off and on. But others are absolutely, and I'm not suggesting Drumheller, but in other communities where they're absolutely party houses and things. And so how do you deal with those aspects? And so yeah, I think from our case, we have it in our land use bylaw. Again, we already have some that have registered. I think it's just a matter of providing everyone on the same playing field so that there is no folks that are operating something that may not be up to snuff. So,
Christine?
So I kind of come at this from more of a hesitant standpoint just because of the building codes and stuff like that and safety. And I know a lot of the houses in this area are older and not up to code. And I'm wondering, I guess this question is probably more for April. So when you encountered that rental, you know what it was called, I do not remember. But when you encountered that, could you umbrella, or do you think they umbrellaed Airbnbs under that?
Sorry. So the scheme that I referenced was a residential licensing scheme. So no, not really, but possibly, because if it's a residential dwelling and then they're renting certain rooms out, and then they maybe would be licensed anyway, even if it's a short-term rental. So it's definitely an extension that we could look at, and certainly look at whether they have incorporated that into other organizations. Into other municipal versions of that scheme. We could definitely look and see if they've done that, and let you know. I think it really depends on what the intention is, what you're trying to achieve. Right.
Well, that's one way we could get them all registered and coming forward, and then we could also at the same time make sure they're safe. Because the last thing anybody wants to happen is you being in a basement suite or something, that the windows are this big and there's a fire. And who gets blamed for that? Because that's a huge mess. So,
yeah. Anybody else?
Sorry.
Tom?
Yeah, I think there might be a bit of a parallel here between this and what we went through with the livery bylaw. That it was basically recognized that, if we have a business in the community that is making money that could be potentially hazardous to people in the community or whoever else is using that business, then it was incumbent on the town that if we license that business to basically make it safe. And so this was to me, there's kind of a parallel here is that if we are going to have businesses operating in the town, and there could be safety issues, then I think the town has to make sure that if we are going to license these businesses, that they have to be safe. I don't think we have a choice.
Fred?
Just one final point. I happen to be down at the Chamber of Commerce, and there's an accommodation board up. And the accommodation board includes everybody that has been licensed and permitted and has a business license in town. So when we get a busy weekend, July the 1st, and they go in and it says no vacancy, no vacancy, no vacancy all the way through it, but they haven't thought that there's a Airbnb system in place, we're really telling people that we have less accommodation than we do in the community. So this would kind of help us as a community look more receptive and more available to the people that come, because I know that on a busy weekend people can go all the way to Dilly or out of town to stay because there's nothing left in town to stay when there could be Airbnbs vacant. So it's not just all about regulation and trying to get that, trying to get everybody in place. It's about trying to enhance the visitor experience in our community as well. And I think that's the way we should approach it as well.
Christine?
Yeah, on that vein, when I did work in tourism for the chamber, we had a list. And so when people would come, we actually would physically call the places and make the bookings for them. So if somebody was registered or whatever and the chamber had all these numbers, then absolutely we could help them fill them up.
Anybody else? Well, and I think the other thing is we have to remember that we have B&Bs that are paying to, follow a business program. So do we have hotels. I think this is no different. It's a business, and in fairness and equality, to everybody else. I just found something on Airbnb, and Airbnb was founded in 2008 to advertise as a cheap place to stay in San Francisco on a blow-up mattress in the living room of a founder's apartment. That's how Airbnb started. It didn't start out by renting out your whole house. So definitely something for you guys to look at.
Yes, absolutely. So.
Okay, any more comments? All right, and finally, we'll just do a quick round table. Fred, do you have anything?
No, I look forward to Thursday night and the interaction with people that have question on the motions we're bringing forward.
Christine?
No, just the Crafter Dark was the only thing that came from the library that's coming up right away. So hopefully we see lots of people out.
Tom?
Yeah, no, nothing much. I enjoyed the East Cooley Pancake Breakfast this Sunday. That's always a highlight. The East Cooley Community Association and Ackmine have their pancake breakfasts, and I recommend them to anybody.
And I just want to do a reminder that this Thursday, February 28th, the bylaws will be discussed at BCF at 6:30 to 8, as well as next Wednesday, March 6th from 5 to 7. The budget will be discussed at the BCF. So hopefully we have residents come out for those events. Fred?
I'll just know that the first set of consultations I got to go to as an elected official, I went to the budget one thinking, wow, everybody always talks about budget and how to spend money and what we're spending money on, and a handful showed up. We had another one about dogs and open there. 80 people showed up. So I hope that's not an indication that the public feels that dogs are more important than how tax dollars are spent, for goodness sakes.
All right, anybody else? All right, we'll call this meeting adjourned.